letting me to know it's good afternoon there, right? So what time is it now there? 1 o'clock?
Yeah, 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock. Okay. Thank you, Mittul, for coming to our class and giving us a lecture on Australian cities. And before we started the class, I want to introduce Mittul. So Dr. Mittul Vahanvati, right? Do I pronounce it correctly? So Dr. Vahanvati is a senior lecturer in sustainability and urban planning discipline at RMIT University. Her research is situated at the intersection of disaster recovery planning, housing reconstruction, and then community resilience and climate change adaptation. She focuses on both institutional programs and community capabilities to make decisions for longer-term disaster risk reduction for resilience and adaptation. She adopts co-design and knowledge co-production approaches in her applied research. Her research work is India, Solomon Island, and also Australia. Her research is funded by numerous sources like UN bodies, including UN Habitat, UNEP, UNFCCC, and then national and local government, as well as non-government organizations, including Habitat for Humanity. And then currently she's working for Ahuri. I forgot the definition of Ahuri, probably you can explain after this. And then also funded research project in Australia. She coordinates a suite of urban design courses at RMIT University, as well as lead climate change transformation research group. So Mittul or Dr. Vahanvati, my students comes from urban design studios. So all of them are master's program. Yeah, and then now they're doing a project on an area in Bandung. There are 2 areas right now they're doing. So there's also incorporate heritage and then also probably some sustainability aspects in their design. So without any further ado, probably we can welcome Dr. Vahanvati. Time is yours.
Thank you, Bagas. And before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners, the Voivurung and Bunvurung language groups on whose land I live, work, and am joining you from. So would I can you see my screen?
Not yet. Oh yeah.
Okay. So I just on Ahuri. Ahuri stands for Australian Housing and Urban Research Institute. So until very recently, so until 2019, my work mainly focused on Asia and Pacific nations, but increasingly now I'm working in Australia too. So today's topic, Bagas asked me to talk about urban design and planning for shaping the future of Australian cities. So I have some background information. So Bagas, please let me know if that is not of relevance. And if you've already covered that, then I'm happy to skip over it.
No.
So why urban design? And what are the challenges that are facing the urban areas? We all know that population is growing, and we passed through a tipping point in about 2009. And since then, it's where the world population became over 50% of global population was concentrated in urban areas, and that trend continues to grow. In context of Australia, by 2020, I think we reached 2022, we reached about 86% of Australian residents living in urban environments. And it is having a massive impact in many different ways. One is the weight as in the actual weight, physical weight, as well as the weight in the sense of the growing demands for resources in terms of land, housing, infrastructure, and so on and so forth. So this report by UNEP on resource panel is quite dire in the sense of that with the growing population increasing from roughly 50% to now roughly 66% by 2050. The use of land instead of as well as the carbon emissions just grows phenomenally. So 125% would be released in terms of a land use that would be required by the urban residents. Sorry, I'm just trying to rush through these context information and hence a bit stumbling there. In the carbon emissions as Australia is way higher in terms of land use, the house size, and globally, we know that we are following a hockey stick increase in CO2. So, and built environment forms a major component of this greenhouse gas emission, resource use, land use. And hence the planning in urban design field has a huge role to play. So this is developed by my colleague Usha Ranigar, who works in circular economy in the built environment, where where she's saying that 40% of emissions are due to the raw materials being used, 40% is energy-related carbon dioxide, and 6% by the construction industry, 10% by workforce. Now, similarly, not at the building level, but at the street level, this is on the left-hand side, developed by for a street in New York. All the bubbles represent a percentage of CO2 emission. And the bigger the bubble, the bigger the emission. So this one is commercial buildings, 34%. This is cars, 13%. Residential 17, large residential 28. So yes, apart from carbon emissions, there are many other issues like safety, diversity, inclusion, the sense of place, all of that, which are contributed by the urban centers. So this is the reason why the field of urban design was born, to address some of the intertwined, complex challenges that we are facing. It began almost during or towards midterm of Industrial Revolution. This is a short documentary, which I won't be showing you today, but it sort of demonstrates the crisis that cities were facing during the Industrial Revolution. Sorry, I'm just going to go next. And because there were no closed sewers, open drainage, lots of industries were being developed, and there was a lot of smoke in the air, and there was a need for planning of cities to accommodate the huge influx of people coming and living in the cities to be part of the industries that were booming at that time. So now we have a different challenge, but it is comparable to what we had witnessed before. And you might all be aware of this grand urban renewal programs that happened in Paris by Haussmann. Then came the ideas by Harvard in terms of the garden cities. But those ideas were to resolve the challenges of that time. But some of these ideas in terms of the garden city have still taken hold in terms of the sprawling suburban cities. Came tower typology as well, proposed by Le Corbusier. Frank Lloyd Wright was working at a different scale and was talking about broad acre city. And because of the invent of towers and the industrialization supporting construction at large scale, also came in the setback rule, because we wanted to have certain visual connection at the street level and higher levels to set back to allow the light and so on and so forth. But there came the whole idea of what is a good city and what are the key elements of a city. And Lewis Mumford and Kevin Lynch. Kevin Lynch developed the whole idea of the image of the city and what makes a city legible. Same with Lewis Mumford. And Christopher Alexander came up with the idea of structure. And all of this we do go through in our urban design course. And what does that mean in the current times? Then came the social side of city, the anthropology of city. And Louis Wirth is called as the father of sociology of cities. And I can go on, same with William White, but I'll stop there with the history. But the very first conference on urban design was held at Harvard University in 1956, where they came up with these three key elements or principles of urban design. And this is where the whole profession and the discipline of urban design started. So what they said was that urban design conserves the natural environment and it is responsive to it. Second is the public realm, as in what are the key elements of an urban public realm. And third is the social interaction. So it was quite balanced in terms of people, nature, and places. I won't go into the urbanism and the charter of urbanism because that becomes just the history in urban design. But so what is its definition and how does that urban design help us in addressing the challenges we are facing currently? So there are many definitions. Jan Gehl, their organization defines urban design as arrangement, appearance, and function of our suburbs. So we're thinking together about how it would look, how things are arranged, and how they'll function at different scales, suburban, town, and city scale. So it's both a process and an outcome. It's not just an outcome. Professor Rob Adams, who is the city architect in Melbourne City Council, he defines urban design as the glue that holds our cities together. It will continue to fail on social, environmental, and financial level without the considered design and management of their public realm. And that is why the Urban Design Protocol is developed. I'll share that with you in a moment. And Linwin Davis, in John Lang's book on urban design, talks about urban design is about creating a vision for an area and deploying the skills and resources to realize that vision. So there are a few other definitions from US, from Europe, from Australia. But it is, at the end of the day, this diagram that I'm showing here, it is about governments working in partnership with industry on projects that are to create a better places. And this is a strategic design policy for built environment developed by New South Wales government. So that is another state in Australia, New South Wales. Melbourne is located in the state of Victoria. So this state has developed a policy document called Better Placed. And in there, they define the role of urban design is to better fit for healthy environments, to perform better, to be better for community, for people, to ensure that they work properly with each other, add value, and look and feel inviting and attractive. So urban design is no more, the challenges it faces are becoming more and more complex. We're not just thinking about a well-functioning, practical city, or a city which is memorable, which Kevin Lynch was talking about, the legibility, you can navigate it properly and it's memorable. It is also now, one has to consider the health of the people and the planet. We have to think about equitability. We have to think about resilience because of climate change. So there are a lot of things at making it really complex. It's not as simple anymore. So how is it done in Australia? Primarily, there is a Planning and Environments Act, which was developed in 1987, a long time ago, which forms the overarching act under which there are planning schemes, such as the planning strategies, policies, and provisions. And provisions are state level, which every council in the state has to follow. But each council can also then have their particular provisions, general provision or operational provisions. But within that, there's statutory planning and strategic planning. So statutory planning is about a developer or someone having developed a design and they go to get it approved by the statutory planners. So statutory planners make sure that the new development complies with the policies and provisions. Whereas strategic planning is about thinking about the future and developing a plan. So that is where my studios are focused on, and that's what I'll share with you today. So this is at Australia level, this is a part of the Urban Design Protocol. And so this diagram suggests various elements of urban form and what are the guidelines and tools. So these are the different scales, the hierarchy of scales. So at national level, there is Our Cities, Our Future National Urban Policy. And now the COAG, it is the Council of Australian Government, is replaced by Cabinet during COVID times. But this diagram still hasn't changed. So, and there's an urban design protocol which guides everything that's under. And each state has their policies and plans. As I had shown you here, they have policies and provisions. And then there are regions, like there is regional metropolitan plans. So there are plans at that level, and goes all the way down to street and a particular site on which a house or a building sits. So within this, there are these 4 elements, which is what I'll show you in other slide. But at state level, there's a municipality strategic statement, which the state develops, and they forecast population growth. And in that regards, what is the housing requirement? And the state asks each municipality or council to integrate that in their strategic planning. So there would be said, then each region would have their settlements plan, and at town or neighborhood level, you create structure plan or precinct structure plan or urban design framework. So now this terminology changes from place to place. So I'm not sure what is being used in Indonesia. But this is where my students focus on, that how do you develop something at a precinct neighborhood level in terms of structure plan. This structure plan then informs the translation into planning policies. So some of it has to be, it informs the changes in the planning policies and schemes. So three-dimensionally, if you see, this is a small area where typically 500 to 5,000 people, which requires planning permit, and that is reliant on the structure plan, which is developed for a larger area, and that is reliant on the growth area framework plan at the whole of council level. So I won't read out all of this, but there's minor differences between structure plan and urban design framework. Often these two are used interchangeably, but precinct structure plan is where my students tend to focus on. These are master plans for local areas that cater for between 5,000 to 30,000 people, 2,000 to 10,000 jobs, or a combination of both. And they are the blueprints for localized development and investment that will occur over many years and will incorporate relevant directions already outlined in the higher level frameworks. So urban designers, they won't design particular sites, but they design the tools that will change the cities. And these tools are the products of urban design, discrete, actionable, and made to change the status quo. These tools are rules, plans, and pilot projects that transform neighborhood. So I'll share one case study with you in a moment, but say this is say Greater Melbourne, okay? The square rectangular you see is the Melbourne city center, and the state determines these priority different precincts. So that's not determined by individual councils. It is determined by the whole state. They determine at a larger scale that we need this new transport corridor. The red dots are health facilities that are already there. So the council, the state has determined that there will be priority precincts, which are orange, the Fisherman's Bend, and this area. They will have state significant industrial precincts. So industrial precincts are showed, I can't see where they're shown. But the health and education precinct is all, the red are all the health precinct and the blue are the education facilities. So the government has determined where they want to invest money and how they want to transform these precincts. So here is RMIT University where I am located. And because it is becoming, it has been identified as a health and education precinct, now there's massive changes that are happening in this area. So as to how to link these two educational and these three educational institutions to each other, how students can meet each other, mingle with each other, and so on and so forth. So, and there's a massive underground train line also happening with lots of stops in between for students. So all of that is being determined at a state level. And then there are localized projects happening. So this is the urban design charter. Some of these ingredients were already shown in here. So these are the tools and the ingredients, urban form ingredients, which is now shown in a different manner. So each, there's an Australian urban design charter, as well as each state has their own charter too, which says that urban design needs to take care of structure, which is shown here too, accessibility, legibility, animation, fit for purpose and function, complementary mixed use, sense of place, consistency and variety, continuity and change, safety, sensory pleasure, inclusion, and interaction. So whereas in this case, at national scale, what they are talking about is all these ingredients have a scale to it. When you're talking about urban scale structure, it happens at much larger scale, as in at a state level or at a precinct level. Then you talk about grain, density mix, height and massing, street and landscape, facades and materials. So the grain goes smaller, you go to much more detail. And for all of this, you need to check the topography, landscape, environment, social and economic fabric. However, public realm only goes up to here. For the public realm, these are the key aspects, like what is the material of which buildings are built, the street is built, the footpaths are built. What is the facade detail? How does it interact with the public realm and the streetscape and landscape? Yeah. And these all become more like an urban form generators. So yeah, these are further, there are guidelines for each one of them, which urban designers can follow. But without now spending too much time on it, I'd like to jump onto a case study. So this case study example is Cooling Upfield Bike Path. It is in Merribeck City Council, which is just north of Melbourne CBD, about 7 kilometers north of Melbourne CBD. So it is still within 10-kilometer radius of the city. And as you all might know, that the cities are experiencing urban heat because of multiple reasons. A lot of built up area, which also have high albedo effect, high embodied energy, and low heat absorption. Lesser plants or lesser permeable surfaces for water penetration. So cities are 3 to 10 degrees hotter. So this inner city suburb doesn't have any hills, have few rivers, so it's not next to a coast to get sea breezes, or neither has tall hills to have that microclimate. So it gets really, really hot. This is one of the images they had taken as to the shaded areas is 24 degrees, whereas the areas here can go up to 64.9 degrees Celsius. So they developed an indicator, and in disaster context, we know that the disasters are never natural, and so is climate change. It happens at the intersection of exposure, sensitivity, and capacities. So exposure is you are in the way of, say, a cyclone moving. Sensitivity as in you might be elderly or the building might be fragile, and hence you might be more impacted than anyone else. And capacities are socioeconomic and capacities within people and places. So the council developed these indicators for exposure, that they are exposed to heat, yes, these areas. And so what are the sensitivity indicators? They are vegetation, roads, population density, because wherever there's more density, people would feel much more hotter. Elderly people are more sensitive to damage, to impact, and so and so forth. And adaptive capacity is socioeconomic. So people with lower economic group, they won't be able to turn on air conditioning or won't even have access to it. So based on this, this is the Greater Melbourne, and the council is located right there. And as you can see that the coastal areas are not as hot, but the inner city areas, or the more you move away from the CBD, there's more hotter areas. And this is Moreland City Council, which recently changed its name to Marybeck. Their land surface temperature is 9.29. This was as per 2019. So each of the indicators they mapped out essentially. As you can see here, the heat vulnerability index is very high. Here it is not as high because of the mountains. Now this is the entire council area, where you can see this is the main road, which is really hot, and hence this project of cooling the bike path. So bike path is right next to this main road. And they identified 5 priority areas based on those indicators. Where are the most socially vulnerable groups? They are shown as priority 4, the yellow. So elderly, young people, childcare centers and stuff. These are again socially vulnerable groups. Priority 1, red bits. These are activity centers, which is where lots of people gather because they're activity centers. They're shown in teal color. And priority 3 is purple dots. They are neighborhood centers. And 5 is industrial areas. So they had to deal with all of them, but which is the most first priority? So again, some of these mappings as to where is the vegetation, where is the water, where are the key issues in terms of materials, social, and the natural aspects. So this is a framework of sorts they had created, that let's increase the evaporative air cooling because through trees, increase vegetation, reduce reflective materials, street design. So this is more large strategic thinking. And based on that, they came up with the goals. Within each goal, there is a design strategy. There is and what is the target area and how they will measure the performance. So as you can see that goal 1 was responding to urban heat island effect through integrated whole of council approach. So not bits and pieces here and there, but a very thought out holistic approach. Reducing the impact of urban heat events, and raising community awareness. So this is knowledge and awareness. And again, see, these are very high-level visioning documents. That streets is one thing, the private realm, the council-owned land. Where do you do what, adopt what strategy? Sydney Road, which was the main road that I was talking about, and the bike path is right parallel to that road, and so is the train line. So a number of strategies were identified in terms of urban forest strategy, urban heat island action plan, and street tree planting plan, transport strategy, park close to home, bicycle strategy. But this is what I'm going to focus on, that Coburg and Brunswick, they are the two suburbs, so towns. And for that, they had developed structure plan. As you can see, structure plan. So those structure plan informed a few other ideas. So this is up to Moreland Road is the suburb of, yes, Bagas, did you want to say something?
Go. Sorry, you can continue, Mittul.
Okay. So north of Moreland Road is another suburb. It's Coburg, and it's Brunswick, and the south. No, what am I saying? North of Moreland is Coburg, and south of Moreland Road is Brunswick. So see, Brunswick and Coburg. So two towns. But this area, which was identified as highly vulnerable to heat, so as you can see, there are the dots that are shown here, 1, 2, 3. They all are very high heat vulnerable. They have identified in this number 2 as the awnings or vacant sites, which can be utilized for urban greening, and 3 is the trees. So they have identified the heat, the land parcels that can be used, existing tree cover, and they had done a lot more analysis in terms of permeable site versus not permeable site too. Similarly, for this activity hub, they had done similar study. And now showing it all together, the surface temperature about 45 degrees Celsius. These are the train stops. As I was saying, the bike path is next to that train line, and this is the main road as well. So they're really next to each other. This is Coburg and that's Brunswick. They both are sitting right next on top of each other. And they were trying to understand why is there a heat concentration in the areas where there is. Excuse me. By overlaying this information with, say, tree cover, the roof coverings, materials of roads and roofs, that sort of analysis gave a different picture. Excuse me. I'm not sure. Sorry, I was trying to find the mute button. Followed by that, they identified where the car parks are and who owns which land. Is the orange ones are council-owned land. Pink ones are privately owned car parks. And there's train stations. And this is the whole study area. So one whole semester, my students also were looking at this same projects while the council was working on it. Because you may come up with ideas, but then the feasibility and practicality of it is another thing. They looked at the street width, whether trees could be planted on the footpath or on the street. So this is the width of the roads and streets. And as you can see, there is a lot of different width of streets. Based on all of these studies, this analysis, and yeah, this is just showing how urban heat in 2014 has changed, it's become hotter in 2018. And this is the vulnerability index, where the socioeconomic aspects of people are brought into overlaid on top of the heat. So based on that, a few ideas, a structure plan was developed for this site, for this whole long linear site, but also this linear, another movement corridor was also factored in. So the blue boxes are the activity centers where they decided they will focus on, because there's a concentration of vulnerability as well as heat. And the yellow boxes, as you can see, they're all activity centers, and so there's a lot of people concentrated there. And the green circle is the recreational node. So what was very evident is that there's greening and a river on the east. There's some recreational area here, but this whole center here lacks as much greening and has concentration of activities along these two paths, and has concentration of heat and vulnerability. So something has to be done about that. So they came up with a string of parks idea, or park close to home. There was strategy developed to start incorporating trees along each of these active movement routes. The bicycle path along here, they have started increasing this green bit that you see here and some green bit here, all along the route. And half of this project is finished. I'll just zoom in if I can. Half of this, so this project here, the whole train line has been lifted from above ground, and from Moreland Station all the way up to here, and entire corridor has been greened, and there's bike paths, there's pedestrian paths, and lots of swales and greening. Similarly, they're doing, say, now extending that all the way up to here. So it will be entirely a green corridor. Simultaneously, what they're doing is identifying pockets of parks which they can infiltrate in the existing dense suburb. So this is Saxon Street. This is the council library. So this land was owned by council, and presently there were car parks along that road, not really used as much. So and being council owned land, they could easily transform it. So that whole area has been made permeable, green. So now the library also has doors here which open out. So that's the library, which now will have opening onto this area, and it becomes a beautiful, sorry, this is the library. It can open out, and it's become a beautiful green space here. This was the Sydney Road in 2014, and as you can see, there are lots of car parked along either side, because this street is dotted with lots of shops, and people love to walk along this street. But now, if you see here, there was nothing in this area either, which council has created like a public place and greening. There's every corner now they've started doing rain gardens. So when it rains, it actually helps trees grow. This is also a rain garden, and there are trees being planted all along the road. And every corner will now have a way to absorb the, the water, because just planting trees doesn't help. Trees need water, otherwise they won't have the same evapotranspiration required for cooling. This whole street, which is next to the library, as I was talking to you about, that is now green, which was just car parks, as I mentioned before, is now entirely green. So the council is creating routes and a string of small pockets of greening on either side. So these initiatives are going hand in hand with park close to home. So the idea is that everyone has a small pocket park within 400 meters of walking distance. And the bicycle strategy too, that every bicycle route should be under a shade. It shouldn't be exposed to extreme heat. And open space strategy goes hand in hand with park. So what sort of open spaces do you have? Is it a sports field? Is it a kids park? What sort of open strategy there is? So the idea is that the canopy cover, the canopies of trees should cover the streets. So by 2050, the council wants to increase their tree cover up to 40%. And trees take time to grow. So they also have developed a street tree planting guide, which people can look at as to which trees grow well here, which trees can withstand high temperatures, low water, because Australia is one of the most drought-prone countries in the world. So Melbourne City Council has also identified that some of the large trees will get infested by insects and diseases due to increasing temperature, and they won't be surviving. So they have started planting other trees in between, because those trees will take time to grow. So the trees that are growing now may not survive in the future. So I think it needs, as you can see, just looking at urban heat also requires you to look at the car parks, the ownership, the water map, a forest strategy, open space strategy, and then you apply that to one small site. But the framework that I showed you as to what is the framework, what contributes to urban heat, and how do you measure it, that is the key to actually explaining to you how you can decide. So it's very hard to tell whether a strategy comes first or the analysis comes first. They kind of are very iterative. And I hope this example helped you understand a bit about Australia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mittul. Pardon?
I'm open to questions.
Yeah. Now we're going to open discussion sessions and then also question sessions. Is there any questions? First, we go to the participants on Zoom. Is there any questions? No, apparently not. What about here? Students in class? Is there any questions? Well, so some of the students actually a couple of weeks ago, they just returned from Sydney, Mittul. So they did, what is it called? Student mobility program with University of Sydney. And then probably in the future, they can go to Melbourne as well. So experience what the city feels like and then go to the case study that you mentioned. So yeah, is there any questions? One, two, one. One, fine. Bintang? No? Okay. So probably you can, yeah, introduce yourself first to Mittul.
Hello, Miss Mittul. My name is Ifa, and I'm currently an urban design student. Actually, probably my question is, what we see from your case study is more in the aspect of regulations and how it affects to the environment and so on. But but how does the impact of the upcycling of the cooling shade of the bicycle lane actually impact to the local communities there? Do people cycle more, or do people like gather more in those areas and stuff like in the social aspect?
Yeah, they're quite intertwined, aren't they? And the council always asks for us if there are students who want to do research with them, because councils don't have that capacity to do research. And we often, our bachelor's or master's level students, we propose some topics to them when industry approaches us, and some of the students do that research. Currently, they are looking for students to do research on social impact of a park close to home. I need to still see the findings, but it does certainly feel there would be social impacts too.
Interesting. Yeah, that can be your thesis topics in the future. Do you have another questions?
No, thank you.
Is there any other questions from students? Or do you want to ask? Or probably participants from Zoom? Okay, yes, our second questions.
Hello, Miss Mittul. My name is Imas. I want to ask the question about how do you decide which one is the first priority for the strategic planning? Yeah, can you explain to us?
Yeah, as I said, it's sometimes really tricky, right? Balancing the level of funding council has, what the planners, sustainability teams, transport planners, urban designers, when they think about something that this is priority, but then they do community consultations. They set up booths in public places, have posters, and ask communities to participate in surveys, just have a chat with them as to what is of concern to them, what is their priority. And I think it's a combination of all the three, that what is the analysis showing, where are the finances and how much are the finances, and third is what is the community needs and wants. It's these three combinations which determine where the council would focus first, and then, yeah. It's not very straightforward. It is quite... so when council develops a structure plan, they also have to get it approved by the councillors before it becomes public. They have to, within the council, they have to get it approved, but horizontally, they have to get it approved, get a yes from the communities and the shop owners as well. So, for example, at one site, there was a huge problem of women's safety. So the council had to collect data from community, from police and crime prevention department, come up with some ideas, but then also go back out to the community to get their feedback, and then go vertically above in their department to get approval. But what happened was that the local shop owners didn't approve of the idea of closing that street, putting a an activity of, say, rock climbing, so that there are people there all the time. Some wall paintings by local artists, trees, and a kids' play area. They said that their business would suffer if people can't park their cars there. So there's a business group who are saying no, community who is saying yes, the councillors are saying yes, there's money for it, everything is yes, but these businesses just wouldn't agree. So it took very long to get their buy-in and find ways so that their business doesn't get affected to actually implement this. So the way council did was, they said, how about we just do a pop-up for one weekend and you see what is the impact. And in fact, the business of that cafe owner increased because people loved sitting there, and it brought more people there who were walking there, coming there on bicycle or public transport, not cars. So that validated and brought these people on board before it could get implemented.
Fair enough. Well, do you have other questions? Okay. Is there any other questions? Alice? No? Okay. Everyone, participants from Zoom. Actually, I have a question, Mittul, if that's okay with you. So you mentioned that Australia is a dry continent, right? So is there any urban design concept, that comes from Australia, prone to dryness or, those kind of things? Is there any urban design concept related to, like probably water sensitive urban design, those kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I didn't mention that the water sensitive urban design is a big thing, especially in the southern part of Australia, that is New South Wales and Victoria. Because in the north, there is lots of floods and cyclones. So they are very tropical, and there they don't need water sensitive urban design, but it's the south and the center which requires it. So this Marybeck Council, all the rain gardens or pocket parks they're doing, they follow WUSID, the water sensitive urban design. Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions? Alif? Oh yeah, there's a question.
Hello, Miss Mittul.
Probably you can sit here closer to the mic. Yeah.
Hello, Miss Mittul. My name is Amelia. I just
Can you hear?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Recently in other class of us, we have a review about urban design of Central Melbourne, about the principle of urban design. What we had is in the Central Melbourne design guideline, there's more about regulation of urban block and structure, and then site layout, building and mass, and building program. But we cannot find about regulation like incentive and disincentive. So I'm very wondering how is the implementation of regulation, and especially for pushing or about incentive and disincentive that given by the government. Thank you.
You get that, Mittul?
Very good question.
Okay.
So these incentives, there are some at different level, a different scale. So the state government would incentivize developers to work in partnership with the government, especially now when there's a housing crisis, affordable housing crisis. So government is incentivizing that if the developer has at least 10% of houses in their development, which are social housing or affordable housing, they get some bonus in terms of the regulations. They get some leeway in terms of how tall their buildings can be, and so on and so forth. Yeah. There are incentives in terms of if you give a certain percentage of the land for public good or for community purposes, like having, if it's a huge block of development and you provide one street that kind of connects two streets at different levels, which RMIT has done. So that is like providing public access to go through your site. Then you're adding value to, or you're giving it back to the town, you're giving it back to the communities. Then there are certain negotiations you can do in terms of height or bypassing some of the regulations. The most crucial, the one that almost all developers use is the height regulation, by giving some of the ground floor to community. They want to get more airspace, and that is the one people use most. Does that answer your question? Do you, if you're looking for some specific answer, because there are quite a few different ones at local council level, Marybeck Council has also come up with new requirement that all developers have to plant certain amount of green in front of, on the footpath in front of the development. Usually footpaths are council requirement, the municipality requirement, not the developer. Usually developer just gets rid of all the trees, does the building and leaves. But now they are mandated to plant at least certain number of deep-rooted trees on their land as well as on the council land on the footpath. So there are all these mandatory requirements as well as incentives. So it goes both ways. So there's some give and some take.
Okay. Any other questions, Arin? Huh? Bintang? No, I can translate if you. They're a bit shy, Mittul, sorry.
Yeah, hello, Mittul. I'm Prastio.
This is Pak Pras, one of the lecturer as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I see that the participation of all stakeholders it looks very important to implement the plan. For like you mentioned about the green pocket to reduce the heat islands. If it come to the private owned lands, can we plan to it or have to negotiate them, or just using the land owned by state? Is it?
Yeah.
If I've understood your question correctly or not, can you please tell me? You're asking if the government can do such green pockets on the land they own only, or can they do it on private land as well? Is that the question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is a really good question. So the answer is no, the government are not limited to doing it on their own land. They can do it on other land. When they were trying to find out that there are these two green pockets, but there's no way to connect them for pedestrians or for cyclists. There was one house in between, one shop, I must say, in between. So government negotiated to buy that land from that shop owners. So sometimes they do negotiate to buy certain properties, and if there's a vacant place, they would help these shop owner to move there and try to find ways in which they're not disrupting someone else's life, but they are kind of also explaining this is very important for these reasons. And they have bought back a few properties and done some work. But on private land, government can't do much, but the way they can do something is have regulations. So currently there are regulations that for houses, sites, we need at least 40% of land that is permeable. So we need to comply by that regulation. But this nature strip that is on the footpath right in front of my house, the council owns that. And so they usually do the planting there, maintain the trees there. Sometimes, like on my street, I didn't have enough trees and the trees were not having good canopy. So I could even request the council that why is this street so barren? It gets really hot. Can you please do tree plantations on this street? And I got a response from their team, the sustainability team, which looks after trees, that your street is on our plan, but it wouldn't happen until middle of 2024, because there are many other streets that are high on priority. So even individual residents can put in a request, and if I want to do it myself, they would support me, like a guerrilla greening. A lot of people don't want to wait. They get together, all the people living in their neighborhood or on their street, they just purchase a few trees and plant it. And you can do it without informing council, or you can let them know that you're doing it, so that if they are planning something of that sort, they can remove it, because they know that people have already planted. So there's that guerrilla sort of urbanism that happens informally, and there's formal processes as well.
Maybe one more question. Melbourne is, I think, is very famous with the park. It's many parks, a big park, neighborhood park. Can you tell me, is it because the government has a lot of land to make park, or it's because of the participation process with stakeholders to make that park?
Oh, very interesting question. I'm not, I don't have full insights about it.
You can ask your husband. Your husband work for the council, right?
Yeah, he's also a city architect at Darabin City Council. But look, I think there were some legacy parks since colonial times which have remained, and Melbourne did some good things in terms of not getting rid of them. Also not getting rid of trams, which Sydney got rid of them at some point and now reintroducing them. So I feel there are some parks because of the colonial legacy. But now there's a concerted effort by City of Melbourne to create wetlands in the city. So because we have never had that many floods, but now we face the threat of flood, sea level rise. And it is, we all know that just the grey infrastructure is not good enough. It's never going to be good enough. We need hybrid solutions, such as nature-based solutions, as well as grey infrastructure, to have healthy cities and a healthy planet. So so we are there's at a national as well as at state level, there's a series of wetlands being designed and planned for, like the precinct activity centers. There's also such green hubs that are being developed. And Melbourne CBD has plans for million trees, 40%. So it's like a city in a forest rather than urban forest strategy. And all councils are developing their own forest strategy, urban forest strategies too. So Melbourne CBD, they also came up with cool paths. So there's an app you can find if you want to go from A to B, like Google Maps. It kind of shows you multiple paths, but which path will be the coolest. So in summer, you can find which path to take if you're going to walk. So it's called Cool Paths app. So there's a lot happening to increase the greening and water percolation in our cities.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Dr. Pras' daughter lives in Melbourne, Mittul, so he knows Melbourne very well.
Oh, okay. You
I
might
don't-
know the
Yeah.
answer already.
She lives in close to Rockbrook Parks. Rockbrook Parks, I think.
Do you know that area, Mittul?
Roxburgh Park.
Roxburgh.
Roxburgh Park. Yeah. Roxburgh Park.
Roxburgh Park. Sounds familiar with you? No, that's okay. You can
It's
Google
close
that.
to the airport.
Close to the
Which
airport.
suburb?
So,
Which suburb?
I think it's close to the airport. Somewhere near
Okay.
Tullamarine.
Tullamarine? Tullamarine
Yeah,
Airport.
close to Tullamarine.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Any other questions from Aziz or Reina? No? Students? Oh yeah, that's another question from a student. He came back from Sydney a couple of weeks ago, so probably he wants to share his experience whilst in Sydney.
Oh, no, not sharing experience. Just asking. Okay, so hello.
Can you see him? Mittul? He's over there. Yeah, you can share. That's-
Okay, hello. My name is Nabil Rizky. And I'm recently come back from Sydney, and it was a really nice experience to visit Sydney because I think the air quality is very nice, and I think it's much healthier than the city in Indonesia. So I assume that maybe Melbourne will have similar situation in Sydney, and I really interested how Melbourne and Sydney can build the city that feel healthy and with fresh air, and still can reserve many biodiversity in their city, because I think the city have many animals that play along with the humans there. Like maybe in Indonesia we cannot really see animals in the city, and I think that's the unique one in Australia city. So like you said before, I very interested also in nature-based solution, and it's one of the concept that try to solve the problem in the city with more green and blue approach. But sometimes it takes a long time to gain the result, and also need a large land and comes with big price. So is there any approach to combine this with great infrastructure, or how you manage to succeed with this approach? Thank you.
Thank you. RMIT University has a group that works specifically on livability in cities, so the health of cities. And if you haven't looked at the Australian Urban Observatory, AUO, that is all to do with healthy, livable cities, I encourage you to have a look at it. And there is another group that focuses predominantly on biodiversity. in urban environments. Recently, they've been able to establish biodiversity sensitive urban design, the same as water sensitive urban design, but it is biodiversity sensitive urban design. And that framework has been accepted by the highest authority on biodiversity called IUCN. Have a look at that. That gives you a sort of framework for what to consider when designing with biodiversity. And it's not an easy feat because biodiversity works in a very complex way. I'm sure you have heard of the butterfly effect, right? Certain things have done in one place, one part of the world has an impact in other part of the world, and we don't know how. So, and if anything, humans have made it worse, but because we don't understand that complex aspect of it. So what we as urban designers can do for biodiversity is essentially not fragment the natural environments and the natural habitats of non-humans. The highways, freeways, dams, all of those fragment the canopies, which help biodiversity to move from one place to the other. That is, I'm talking about land-based, yeah, not water-based. But that fragmentation of natural habitat is one of the biggest human influence on disrupting biodiversity, their movement and their habitat, and leading to their demise. So that is the one thing you can look at, but then for each and every creature, you would have to see what is their habitat type and where fragmentation is created. So that becomes much in-depth analysis. So some of my students have looked at biophilic design, but not looked into biodiversity sensitive urban design. So that's all I can say for now. Also, the sort of trees, because there is also effect of cats. Here, all the native creatures are nocturnal, and cats come out and they have been killing a lot of native creatures, which mainly come out at night. So now government is also putting a ban on cats being led out of the house at night. Some of the councils have already done that to protect the native creatures. So here also, it's not all positive. You know, there are lots of biodiversity that they're on the verge of extinction. And these regulations are required to protect them. But first of all, you need to analyze and know which are the creatures that are at the verge of extinction, why, and then the way with Urban Heat Island, they've identified these are three key aspects: exposure, sensitivity, adaptive capacity, and find what is best practice. So in terms of indicators, and then develop a solution so that you are then confident that what you are proposing is actually something that will be beneficial rather than harmful. I can't hear you, Bagas.
Okay, can you hear me now, Mittul? Okay, we have another questions. Please, Alice. Can zoom out kali ya? Bersitu aja.
Nggak apa-apa. Thank you for the opportunities. My name is Alice. I have it's just a curious question about the topic that you mentioned before about Urban Heat Island. So actually, I working on some research with my lecturer also, but there's Mr. Slantika. So the research is about urban heat island in Bandung area, Basin Bandung area. So basin is a type of landform that have a concave relief typography. So it's interesting when we talking about urban heat island. And here we in Indonesia actually have a really unique topographic and relief actually, or we call it landform. And especially here in Bandung, we have that's basin relief or concave, like you have hills all around the city. It's Bandung. We live in bottom of we call it yeah, cekungan apa sih? Yeah, basin, and it's make a really unique airflow and really unique wind flow, and actually it's affecting the urban heat island in our city, especially in Bandung. So my question is, when we have that's really unique, I mean, that's topographic things. If you have ever heard about sinking urban heat island, maybe you have heard about that kind of things. So that is happen when we live in basin area such as Lake Bandung. And it makes a really unique method of calculation of urban heat island, and it makes affected city differently in daytime and in nighttime. My question is actually how we urban designer deal with that kind of unique specific condition such as basin area in Bandung. And we can translate it to the urban design guidelines that we create or something like that. Yeah, that's all my question. Actually, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You get that?
Yeah,
Mittul?
yeah. I think yes, topography makes a big difference. It creates microclimates because of topography, because of vegetation, the built form, and the urban heat, when it's measured, there are many different ways of measuring that. I have a colleague with whom I work, and they say that how detailed information do you need? If you need very accurate information, that costs quite a lot. But if you just want something which is based on the satellites, it's much cheaper, and it depends on how much resources someone can put in getting that measure. Because again, that measure changes every year with more development. So they put in instruments at every, say, certain distance in key locations. So if it's topographically hilly, then you would have to put in instruments at different heights. And there's a car park versus there's a green space versus there's a street. All those will have very different effect. So that's not my area of specialization. They are all engineers who do that sort of mapping. So I won't be able to be able to give you much more detail on that. But from having discussions with them, I know that there are many different ways of assessing urban heat. And I think there's whole GIS and LiDAR-based data specialist who bring it all together on maps. And one of the maps that I showed you was the GIS layer, where you can see 2014, 18, and all that. So I rely on those experts to give me the data, and then I do the urban design bit of things.
Okay, does that answer your question? Okay, thank you, Alice. So Alice's questions wrap up the question sessions, and then thank you very much, Mittul. Probably you can tell us more about your CUR, your Center of Urban Research, to us a little bit, probably 1 minute before you leave. So probably one of my students are interested to go to CUR to do their PhD. I don't know, in the future, just like me. Just like my student. Or is there any closing statement from you?
Yeah, no, look, I'll be quite keen on knowing what you guys are doing. And it's very different. Like I work in India too, and I know the challenges in developing countries are very different to, say, when you look at Australia, a developed country. It's not like comparing apples to apples, is it? Very, very different challenges. So it's not easily comparable or translatable. But what I would say is when there's lack of resources and more challenges, it can bring innovative ideas. So don't always look to developed countries for solutions. I'm sure there are many innovative ways you can come up with contextually appropriate ideas. CUR. So it is Center for Urban Research, which doesn't mean that we don't focus on regional areas. We do focus on that. And within that center, there are 4 key themes we focus on. One is housing, one is disasters and climate change, which is the bit I lead. There is nature and healthy cities, and 4th is, I think, indigenous knowledge. We are still in process of finalizing these themes because there are quite a few, 11 research groups, but we are trying to bring them into 4. So it is center filled with all researchers as well as lecturers and as well. So my research project sits within KUR, but I also teach within sustainability and urban planning. So I have foot in both areas. And all PhD candidates sit within it. It's very multidisciplinary. So if ever you decide to come in, do your PhD there, you'll be surrounded by social scientists, architects, planners, policy experts, governance experts, you name it, indigenous knowledge, biodiversity and nature, human geographers. So you'll be surrounded by all different talents and expertise. We have the world famous people in our centers, like Libby Porter, who focuses on embedding decolonizing education. So how do we educate ourselves, which is not Western colonial knowledge systems? We have ICON Group, who has developed this biodiversity sensitive urban design.
How do you spell it? ICON.
ICON.
Okay. Thank you.
We have Healthy Livable Cities, who has come up with AUO, Australian Urban Observatory, which is whole of Australia level mapping of livability based on 18 or 20 in different indicators, and it's live, it constantly updates itself and taps into statistical data. They have recently been able to influence policy changes at global scale. So yeah, and we have climate change transformations. Until recently, the co-convener with me, Lauren Rickards, she was also on the advisory panel of IPCC report. So, and I did advice on the midterm review of UNDRR.
Yeah.
On the Sendai framework. So yeah, it's I'm trained as an architect, but I'm surrounded by so many amazing people. So yeah, you're more than welcome to join us.
Thank you very much, Mittul. That was a very good presentation. Thank you for a round of applause for Mittul. Okay, and we usually hand out a certificate, but unfortunately today we don't have. But I will send it to you. Yeah, our certificate of appreciation for giving us the lecture today. Probably in January I will come to Melbourne and hand it over to you personally.
Fantastic. I'd love to meet you in person, Bagas. Last time.
Okay, it's very hard to meet you well, usually in Melbourne. Okay, probably as the last. Yes. Oh, unfortunately, Mittul has to leave. Probably you can email. If there's anyone who wants to ask you a question, where can they email you, Mittul?
Yeah, I had provided my email address on my presentation. I'll
Okay,
share the
will you-
PDF.
Okay.
I'll share the PDF with you. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very
And
much,
if they
Mittul.
search my name on RMIT, they'll find me. There's no other Mittul.
Okay. It's easy. And then can we do like a picture together, Mittul, with
Yeah, sure.
other people in the participants on Zoom? Could you please open your camera so we can have photo sessions together? Tina, Rania, and Papinto, thank you for coming. Okay, Tina, could you please open the camera? So Pinto is my PhD students from Timor-Leste, so probably we can collect together. Okay, so who's gonna take picture? Is it Reina? Okay. Okay. Okay, 3, 2, 1, one more. Okay. 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 Thank you very much, Mittul. And then hope to see you soon again.
Bagus.
Bagas.
Oh, sorry. One more picture. Is that okay? One more picture. So there's another photograph coming. Photographer. Which one? Oh. Okay. Sorry, Mittul. Just one more second. Can you hear me? Mau foto di mana, Pak?
Semuanya
di sini, semua tetap di tempat.
Okay. So they're gonna change.
Tapi Pak Bagas sama Pak Pras nih.
Kemarin.
Yang Bapak kasih aja dulu.
Okay. Yuk, aba-aba dong.
Merapat.
Okay. In 3. In 3, 2, 1.
1, 2, 3.
Sama.
Oke, sekali lagi. 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Oke, thank you.
Thank you, Mittul. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Have a good day. We cannot hear your voice. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's a little bit video of CUR, so probably if you're interested, pasang aja. Center for Urban Research.
Tina
mana Tina?
itu yang lagi share.
This is what Mittul mentioned. Yeah?
Kedengeran belum?
Replay.
Apakah sudah terdengar nggak?
Musiknya bisa masuk kan?
Share sound.
Bukan Tina ini, Kare.
Oh,
yang bagus share.
Oh,
Tina.
di share screen-nya dicentangin share sound. Iya.
gimana sih Tina?
Ini share.
The state of our cities will profoundly influence our future. The majority of people on this planet already live and work in cities, and by 2050, 70% of the world's population will be urban dwellers. Cities are our engines of innovation and creativity, and they are also sites of concentrated resource consumption and social inequality. Rapid population growth, a changing climate, and volatile global economic conditions have raised important questions about how our cities work. RMIT's Centre for Urban Research is the leading urban research hub in Australia. It is responding to the need to shape cities that are environmentally, socially and economically sustainable by collaborating with government, industry, not-for-profits and other leading urban academics. How can we accommodate growth in our cities in ways that are environmentally sustainable and socially just? Can we improve planning and transport for more vibrant neighbourhoods and better connect people between their homes and work? How can we shape the future of affordable and livable housing and improve processes of urban governance so that all residents have a say in decision-making? The Centre is investigating residential development in Melbourne to cater for a projected population of 8 million by 2050, looking at bridging the disconnect between people and natural environments to improve community health and protect our native plants and species, researching household automated technologies and the benefits of low-carbon housing to protect the most vulnerable. And the Centre is exploring innovative options for transport and urban infrastructures to improve city regions. Now, more than ever, it is critical to find solutions that tackle these challenges of city living. RMIT's Centre for Urban Research, connecting people and ideas for sustainable urban futures.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Papinto. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oke, sekarang udah Pak ya? Atau masih sensi?
Apa